Hi there. This video lesson is going to talk about basic chords, which are basically the open chords. Those are typically down in the open position, which is at the end of the fretboard. The notes you play are usually on the first, second, or third fret. Some strings are open. That's why it's called open chords. And they're very full because you got some open chords, open note strings that are ringing. So basically, some of the key factors that I consider when I'm doing this, when I'm playing these chords, is that I want to make sure that each string is sounding. There's no muting going on, no string being dampened. And I show students this ability to play a chord and to basically play each string individually. So what typically will happen is maybe the curl of the hand around the fretboard will mute some strings. So like, you're putting your finger on one of these frets and the curl of your finger might touch the string below it. And so you want to make sure that you're not dampening those strings, so you have a sound sort of like this. It's not, you want that clear ringing. And another factor that might cause some dampening or strings to not be sounding is if you're not pushing hard enough on certain strings. So at the tips of your fingers, it's at the beginning of your guitar journey, your fingers are soft on the tips, the flesh there, and so you want to develop calluses, which they get a bit rough and hardened, and will allow you to push on the strings and to provide the required force. But sometimes, just because of all the fingers that you're trying to push on the strings, you reduce the force on some of the fingers, and so they don't sound. So that'll take some practice. Just be patient and keep trying to play these chords so that they sound individually. So when you play, say, an E chord, and I have some of these chords outlined on my website, you basically just pick each string, make sure they ring. Until that point, you want to keep trying until you get that kind of sound. And the other thing to notice is the kind of the hand position. People ask about that a lot. Some of my students, how do I fret these chords? Where do I put my thumb? Stuff like that. The thumb is generally not horizontally behind the fretboard, pointing like parallel to the neck, or vertically. It's somewhere in the range between those, and it changes depending on the angle. But generally, your thumb is kind of in the middle of the back of the fretboard. You're not too high up for the most part, and you're not down low. And you want to make sure you don't have any unnecessary tension or strain in the hand. It shouldn't be that painful to be playing. Of course, you're going to have to build up some strength in your hand, but you don't want to be pushing too hard and having a lot of strain. So basically your arms hanging down naturally at your side your body. Sometimes this might be out further if you're playing up higher on the fretboard. It's going to be closer to your body, but usually. So you just want to make sure that be aware of any tension and unnecessary strain that you're putting on. Now there is some force that has to be put on in the back of the thumb. It's opposing the fingers that are fretting the notes. The other thing that students sometimes ask me is where do I put my fingers on the frets? And that is another factor that will cause some buzzing or some muting where the string's not sounding properly. Now these metal things are the frets themselves, but when you push down, say, behind the fret, you're actually shortening the string from the fret to the bridge. So ideally you want to be fairly close to the fret, and you might have to adjust where your fingers are. For an A chord, like I show, you got your three fingers on the same fret basically, so they're kind of scrunched in there. So obviously this finger is away from the fret, and this one's close. The third finger is closer to the fret. But for the most part, you want to be closer to the fret than away from it. A lot of times I'm playing kind of in the middle, but you don't want to get too far away, if you don't have to. But like I say, the main factor is really making sure that the clarity is there. So if we talk about some of the chords that I'm showing on my website, I show a C chord. These chords are basically playing from the root, with the name of the chord. C chord, you'd be playing, the lowest note would be the C. So there's other strings above that are open, and I'll get into this later, but you could potentially play those other notes too. But for now, we'll just start with the root of the chord, and if we're playing a C, then we'll be playing the C on the 5th fret. and playing all the 5 strings below. So that's the C chord. A G chord plays all 6 strings, and the G is on the lowest string here. Now, if you notice that there's a big gap between the 2nd and my 3rd finger here, because the G's are on the E string, the 2 E strings, the low and the high. So there's a bit of a stretch there for you, and I find some students have trouble with that initially. But it's fairly comfortable after a while. The other way to play that is use your 3rd and pinky to get the 2 G's. You can do that too, but you still have a fairly large gap, stretch between the 3rd and 4th finger. Another chord is E, which is this one. So you play all 6 strings for that one. A, which I showed earlier, you play, say, the bottom 5 strings, starting with the A string. D, with, say, the bottom 4 strings. C, or we did C. The other one is F, and that's probably the toughest one for beginners to learn, because what you have to do is what they call bar. So whenever you play more than one string at a time with the same finger, you call that a bar. So the F chord has these 2 on the 1st fret. It has these 2 frets, these 2 notes played. So the trick is that you got to play the other notes and then use your index finger to bar 2 strings. So you're not using the tip of your finger, you're using kind of the underside here, the fleshy part of the finger. And that is tricky because you got to push on the 2 strings and make sure they're clear. So you want to make sure that those 2 notes sound. So what we're going to get into in another lesson is taking some, explaining how those chords work. What notes are making up the chord, and then how to alter those chords to make other chords like minor chords and stuff like that. Because all the ones we've been talking about are major chords, and we'll explain what that means. And then the other thing you want to be able to do is to play bar chords. So I mentioned bars where you start to move the chord up the neck, and the 1st finger usually bars more than 1 string. It might bar like 5 or 6 even strings. And the beauty of that on the guitar is that you can then shift those chords. So you have a shape, basically. If it's a major shape or a minor shape, and if you start moving that up the fretboard, you still have the same, you can learn a whole bunch of chords instantly just by moving it around. Whereas the open chords that I showed you, if you start to move your fingers up, then you're shifting the fingers up, the notes up correspondingly, but then the open strings are still staying the same. So the chords start to don't make any sense a lot of times, because the open strings are staying the same, but the other frets are moving up. So you're not keeping that same interval, the same relationship between the notes. So anyway, hopefully this will give you some pointers as to playing the chords and making sure that each note's ringing, and we'll get into some strumming patterns and some other things in future lessons. So hopefully you enjoy that. See you later.